Back, everybody. I'm going to now jump into chapter 10, which is the last chapter in the founding section of this book, right before we go into the building section. And this chapter is called The Strength of Natural Network Effects. So here we go. For this lesson from the Entrepreneur's Essentials, I'm going with recency bias once again. Yesterday, I was having a discussion with one of our executives on the strength of network effects inherent in the data.world business model. This led to a far-ranging strategic discussion that got us both really excited about the huge potential of our business. Our mission, which I linked to here on Medium, is to create the most meaningful, collaborative, and abundant data resource in the world. There's a lot to unpack there, and we have a multi-year roadmap that I look forward to us unveiling over time. Data.world is the most exciting and ambitious business I have ever worked on. It is only going to make writing this chapter a little more difficult, as I can only unveil so much about Data.world at this time, but I'll do my best. So here we go with this lesson from the Entrepreneur's Essentials. It was first shared at Lucky7.io on January 15th, 2015. I made very few edits to the original post, mostly in the area of readability and grammar, not in the substance of content. After the original post, I'll write about how Data.world and some of our more recent investments map to this. Sometimes startups we meet with, and I've personally seen over 1,000 pitches in the last 2 years. At this point, as I'm writing this, I've seen at least over 2,000 pitches. Talk about their network effect in a hopeful way. But most of the time, it is just that hope, and hope is not a strategy. But Bazaar Voice actually has a working network effect that benefits all participants. Retailers, brands that sell through those retailers, consumers that shop at those brands and retailers, and Bazaar Voice and some of its partners. In other words, the more participants that are on the Bazaar Voice network, the greater the effects of that network for the benefit of all. I wrote about this in detail in my first annual shareholders letter after Bazaar Voice became a public company, and I linked to that here on Medium. I believe the single best report released from Bazaar Voice to describe this network effect with hard data is the Conversation Index, Volume 8, which was released earlier this week. I encourage startup founders or anyone interested in social commerce to read it, and of course I embed that here on Medium and link to it. When you actually think about big data applications, a term coined in 2012 by Raj Dadada in this TechCrunch article, which I linked to here on Medium, Bazaar Voice is one that Raj points out in his article. I've also heard big data applications called SaaS 3.0. Although the SaaS 3.0 term has evolved to become muddled since I first read what analysts in 2011 meant by it. This, by the way, isn't very different from how the term social commerce became muddled after Bazaar Voice first started promoting it in 2006 to describe what we do. Unfortunately, social commerce morphed to mean solutions like Facebook commerce, e-commerce stores, offered by numerous small vendors who are now mostly no longer in business. In contrast, our definition of social commerce meant social media or word of mouth applied in a commerce environment. When we consider investing in SaaS startups at Hurt Family Investments, 34 SaaS startups and counting in our portfolio, which I linked to here in Medium, and just a note here, as of me reading this to you, we are now in 100 startups and I believe 31 venture capital firms in addition to that. We always look for natural network effects. I use the word natural because I use that word deliberately because it is far easier to build solutions that will offer network effects if your market is actually wired that way. As Michael Dell said recently in an interview with Walter Isaacson, who is the author of Steve Jobs and the new book, The Innovators, How a Group of Hackers, Geniuses, and Geeks Created the Digital Revolution, that Josh Baer and I attended at the University of Texas at Austin, the level of difficulty in changing an industry's behavior depends on how long that industry has been engaging in that behavior. In Bazaar Voice's case, the market was, fortunately, wired for brands and retailers to collaborate in a kind of grand bargain. The retailers were there to provide the audience, and therefore the sales that the brands needed. The brands were to provide the market development funds, or MDF, or the co-op advertising to support the retailer in that endeavor. Co-op advertising dollars are as high as $50 billion in the United States to a staggering $520 billion worldwide, according to sources that the Altimeter Group has cited, and I link to them here on Medium. Brands would get higher margins but lower revenues, while retailers would get lower margins but higher revenues. Generally speaking, with Apple being a notable exception, owning both sides of that for much of their sales. So it was natural for Bazaar Voice to tap into this network effect and provide solutions for not only retailers, but also the brands that sold through them. You can see one of the ways how this network effect works for Bazaar Voice and its clients in this Bazaar Voice Connections video, which I embed here on Medium. You can watch it there. I believe that SaaS startups we've invested in, either as advisors or investors or both, such as Alert Media, Clarify, EdgeCase, eRelevance, Fashion Metric, which is now called Bold Metrics, Newcom Link, OneSpot, Onar, O-N-O-R, Order Groove, Pivot Freight, which is now called Convey, Real Massive, and Shelfbox have natural network effects, some inherently stronger in their industries than others. It is one of the key ingredients we look for. I think any SaaS startup would be wise to identify if their B2B market has a natural network effect to tap into. This past Sunday, for example, I engaged in a brainstorm with a SaaS startup that wasn't sure, but by the end of the session, we had all convinced ourselves, and not hopefully, I might add, that indeed a natural network effect existed. That made all of us much more excited about the business than ever before. A SaaS startup without a natural network effect can still be successful. For example, there are replacement market SaaS businesses like Salesforce.com, which started out by disrupting a massive market, Siebel and CRM, with a better, cheaper, faster, and ultimately more function-rich solution because they were building on a single platform versus spreading their research and development over a multiple of client computing platforms and armies of installation consultants. Workday is a more recent example, with them running the same play as Salesforce.com did against Siebel. But in this case, it is Workday against PeopleSoft/Oracle. In fact, replacement market SaaS businesses have grown much quicker than nascent market SaaS businesses because the market already existed and can therefore be easily sized and disrupted, assuming great execution. Their success is about execution in sales, services, and feature parity, and then eventually superiority, again due to that single platform to rapidly evolve on advantage. But now that the SaaS as a superior business model as compared to enterprise software secret is out of the bag, Workday had a monster IPO and Salesforce.com is the most valuable SaaS business in the world, these replacement SaaS startup opportunities are few and far between, meaning that most new SaaS startups we see are in fact nascent and therefore are trying to create their own demand, which requires a lot of evangelism and education. I've written quite a bit about how to evangelize in a nascent market. For example, read chapter 16, Selling to the Cool Kids. And I suggest hiring some great evangelists as full-time and part-time employees and also as advisory board members. Read chapter 13, how to leverage advisors and investors as your extended team on that front. The bottom line is that when I see a SaaS startup pitch us natural network effects in their industry or the lack thereof is one of the first things on my mind. It doesn't mean that they will be successful if their industry has the embedded advantage of natural network effects, but it will certainly help. Reed's Law on Networks, which I link to here on Medium, is a good resource to really nail this home. In investing in B2C companies, we also look for network effects, but usually those are created rather than natural. For example, Apple created a network effect by the integration of iPhones and iPads to the App Store to iTunes. Apple then tried to extend this network effect into social with the launch of iTunes Ping, which was one of their biggest failures in recent years. And I link to that here on Medium. It's hard to imagine that Apple has failed at anything, but you should read that article. Amazon created a network effect by the launch of Prime and the subsequent launches of Prime Instant Videos, Prime Photos, Kindle Owner's Lending Library, etc. Facebook created a natural network effect by the launch of Facebook Login, allowing it to proliferate everywhere. And they also tapped into a natural network effect by launching at select universities where students were naturally connected the way it has always been and expanding out from there. LinkedIn tapped into the natural network effect of professionals working together at companies, both as peers and as partners, and so on. B2C startups we've invested in, like Roykoi and Thread, are tapping into natural network effects. They are both natural, like Facebook's or LinkedIn's. For some of the other ingredients we look for when startups pitch us, refer to Chapter 19, the 5 critical ingredients to build a big company. So that is the end of this lesson as I wrote it over 4 years ago on Lucky7.io, with some edits and updates, like the number of SaaS deals we were involved in. And of course, I just real-time updated that even more here. You can see the original post here and a long comments thread below it. How does this lesson resonate with me over 4 years later after having more experience in startup investing? I link to chapter 22 of the book, The Entrepreneur's Essentials there, and also co-founding and leading Data.World. Well, natural network effects are present throughout the Data.World business model. For example, the network effects between the Associated Press and their many newsroom customers have existed for a long time prior to us coming along. We've been proud to work with them to accelerate the democratization of data across those newsrooms, leading to very effective reporting and journalism awards. Our case study, which I linked to here on Medium with the Associated Press, outlines that work in detail. And we have a natural network effect that exists between the open data and the corporations that would love to use it, such as the US Census data. Businesses like Ancestry and Zillow, for example, are highly dependent on US Census data. As a matter of fact, with the size of our network now, around 2/3 of the Fortune 500 are in it. And a natural network effect that exists between some of our customers, such as several Fortune-size consulting firms and agencies, and their clients as they deliver data and analysis to them via our platform. And natural network effects present in many of the organizations that are members of our community, the world's largest collaborative data community, and their various stakeholders. And a technological network effect underlying in the data itself, as my co-founder and our CTO, Brian Jacob, outlined in this blog post, the most read blog post we have ever written at Data.World, and that, of course, is linked to here on Medium. There are other networking effects that we'll be unleashing, both natural and technological, as we progress through our multi-year strategic plan. I really look forward to seeing the impact they have in the world. As angel investors, we're always thinking about this when we evaluate new startups, but it doesn't mean the business will be successful. Some on the list above in my original post did not turn out to be successful, unfortunately. It does mean that their chances of success are higher. Great execution is still required, and a good dose of luck too. Timing luck especially, and I linked to a post about timing luck here on Medium. I would love to hear your thoughts below. What are the network effects in your industry? Are they natural? Did this chapter inspire you to go look for them in your startups or in your investments?